James Henry Leigh Hunt, October 19, 1784, August 28, 1859, best known as Leigh Hunt, was an English critic, essayist, poet, and writer. Early life. James Henry Leigh Hunt was born at Southgate, London, where his parents had settled after leaving the United States. His father Isaac, a lawyer from Philadelphia, and his mother, Mary Sherrill, a merchant's daughter and a devout Quaker, had been forced to come to Britain because of their loyalist sympathies during the American War of Independence. Hunt's father took holy orders and became a popular preacher, but he was unsuccessful in obtaining a permanent living. Hunt's father was then employed by James Bridges, 3rd Duke of Chandos, as tutor to his nephew, James Henry Leigh, father of Chandos Leigh, after whom the boy was named. Education. Leigh Hunt was educated at Christ's Hospital from 1791 to 1799, a period which is detailed in his autobiography. He entered the school shortly after Samuel Taylor Coleridge and Charles Lamb had both left. Thomas Barnes, however, was a school friend of his. One of the current boarding houses at Christ's Hospital is named after him. As a boy, he was an ardent admirer of Thomas Gray and William Collins, writing many verses in imitation of them. A speech impediment, later cured, prevented his going to university. For some time after I left school, he says, I did nothing but visit my schoolfellows, haunt the bookstalls and write verses. His poems were published in 1801 under the title of Juvenilia, and introduced him into literary and theatrical society. He began to write for the newspapers, and published in 1807 a volume of theater criticism, and a series of classic tales with critical essays on the authors. Hunt's early essays were published by Edward Quinn, editor and owner of The Traveller. Family. In 1809, Leigh Hunt married Mary Ann Kent, whose parents were Thomas and Anne. Over the next 20 years they had 10 children: Thornton Leigh, 1810 to 73, John Horatio Leigh, 1812 to 46, Mary Florimel Leigh, 1813 to 49, Swinburne Percy Leigh, 1816 to 27, Percy Bysshe Shelley Leigh, 1817 to 99, Henry Sylvan Leigh, 1819 to 76, Vincent Leigh, 1823 to 52, Julia Trelawney Leigh, 1826 to 72, Jacintha Leigh, 1828 to 1914, and Arabella Leigh, 1829 to 30. Mary Ann, who had been in ill health for most of her life, died January 26, 1857, aged 69. Leigh Hunt made little mention of his family in his autobiography. Mary Ann's sister, Elizabeth Kent, Hunt's sister-in-law, became his amanuensis. Newspapers. The Examiner. In 1808 he left the War Office, where he had been working as a clerk, to become editor of the Examiner, a newspaper founded by his brother, John. His brother Robert Hunt, among others, also contributed to its columns. His criticism earned the enmity of William Blake, who described the journal's office at Beaufort Buildings, Strand, London, as containing a nest of villains. Blake's response included Leigh Hunt, who aside from publishing the vitriolic reviews of 1808 and 1809 had added Blake's name on a list of quacks. This journal soon acquired a reputation for unusual political independence. It would attack any worthy target, from a principle of taste, as John Keats expressed it. In 1813, an attack on the Prince Regent, based on substantial truth, resulted in prosecution and a sentence of 2 years' imprisonment for each of the brothers. Leigh Hunt served his term at the Surrey County Jail. Leigh Hunt's visitors in prison included Lord Byron, Thomas More, Lord Brougham, Charles Lamb and others, whose acquaintance influenced his later career. The stoicism with which Leigh Hunt bore his imprisonment attracted general attention and sympathy. His imprisonment allowed him many luxuries and access to friends and family, and Lamb described his decorations of the cell as something not found outside a fairy tale. When Jeremy Bentham called on him, he was found playing battledore. A number of essays in the Examiner that were written by Hunt and William Hazlitt between 1814 and 1817 under the series title The Round Table were collected in book form in The Round Table, published in 2 volumes in 1817. 12 of the 52 essays were by Hunt, the rest by Hazlitt. The Reflector. In 1810 to 1811 he edited a quarterly magazine, The Reflector, for his brother John. He wrote The Feast of the Poets for this, a satire, which offended many contemporary poets, particularly William Gifford of the Quarterly. The Indicator. In 1819 to 1821, Hunt edited The Indicator, a weekly literary periodical published by Joseph Appleyard. Hunt probably wrote much of the content as well, which included reviews, essays, stories, and poems. Poetry. In 1816 he made a mark in English literature with the publication of Story of Rimini, based on the tragic episode of Francesca da Rimini told in Dante's Inferno. Hunt's preference was decidedly for Chaucer's verse style, as adapted to modern English by John Dryden, in opposition to the epigrammatic couplet of Alexander Pope which had superseded it. The poem is an optimistic narrative which runs contrary to the tragic nature of its subject. Hunt's flippancy and familiarity, often degenerating into the ludicrous, subsequently made him a target for ridicule and parody. In 1818 appeared a collection of poems entitled Foliage, followed in 1819 by Hero and Leander, and Bacchus and Ariadne. In the same year he reprinted these 2 works with the Story of Rimini and the Descent of Liberty with the title of Poetical Works, and started The Indicator, in which some of his best work appeared. Both Keats and Shelley belonged to the circle gathered around him at Hampstead, which also included William Hazlitt, Charles Lamb, Brian Proctor, Benjamin Haydon, Charles Cowden Clarke, C.W. Dilke, Walter Coulson and John Hamilton Reynolds. This group was known as the Hunt Circle, or, pejoratively, as the Cockney School. Some of Hunt's most popular poems are Jenny Kissed Me, A Boo Ben Edom and A Night Rain in Summer.